The Rebel Alliance command room was plunged into shadows, illuminated only by the bluish lights of the tactical monitors. Mon Mothma watched in silence as Bail Organa and General Dodonna analyzed the latest intelligence reports. "We're fighting an empire of enormous proportions," muttered Dodonna. "And on top of that, they have Vader himself." There was an uncomfortable silence. It was then that Cassian Andor, leaning against the wall, ventured, "What if we had our own Vader?" Mon Mothma stared at him, puzzled. "Are you suggesting that we clone a Sith Lord?" she asked, not believing what she was saying. Cassian straightened up. "We found remnants of his genetic tissue, from a wound he left behind." The idea seemed absurd, but there was a dangerous glimmer of hope in the eyes of those present. Bail pondered. If anyone could turn the tide of the war, it would be him, or someone like him. The decision was not easy, but the proposal was taken seriously. The rebel leaders knew that it wasn't easy to clone any Imperial officer. Genetic material was scarce and unstable. Except that Vader could be different. His high concentration of midichlorians, something very rare, made his DNA resistant to time and mutations. All they needed was a place and technology capable of decoding it. That's when they thought of Yoda. Yoda, reclusive in exile, hesitated when they went to see him. Dark is this path. Very dangerous, it is. But Mon Mothma insisted. We don't want to create a new Sith Lord. We want a chance for balance. Yoda closed his eyes, feeling the Force stirring. Finally, he spoke. Kamino, the long-forgotten storm planet. This aroused everyone's curiosity. Kamino was the ocean world where the clones of the Old Republic army were created. With the rise of the Empire, Kamino was erased from the records. The Emperor considered the clones to be flawed. They aged quickly, became unstable, and were expensive to maintain. Destroy all, decision of the Sith it was, said Yoda. Footprints in the sand, forever erased they were. The planet would have been bombed, destroyed, and the knowledge of Kaminoan genetic engineering scattered or lost. Still, the Rebel Council saw no other alternative. Let's find it. What's left? Reaching Kamino was almost impossible. The storm covering the surface seemed eternal. The floating structures were almost all submerged, taken over by alien marine vegetation. Only one central tower remained, hanging by corroded wires. It was as if time had stopped, but it had also destroyed everything. They rummaged through the wreckage and found parts of the facility's old gene bank. They were rusty, but still pulsed with some residual energy. Inside a waterlogged chamber, they found partial records of how the Kaminoans manipulated the clones' DNA and accelerated their growth. It wasn't easy, but the rebel specialists managed to extract genetic codes and set up a new system on board the ship. It won't be pretty, said one of them, but if it works, it will change everything. They took the restored equipment to a secret base on the shores of Dantooine. It took weeks of failed attempts, reconstructions, and DNA adjustments. Tarkin's cloned bodies degenerated within hours. They not only had Darth Vader's DNA, but that of a few separatist leaders. Most couldn't survive the start of the experiment, but when Vader's DNA was inserted, the tank glowed differently. The cell structure stabilized. The first divisions were perfect. R2-D2 emitted an excited beep. For the first time, something had worked. They followed the growth with extreme attention. No sign of the dark side yet. After 3 weeks, a small body floated in the cloning tank. Dark skin, straight brown hair, familiar features. One of the rebels approached with eyes full of disbelief. That's him. It's Anakin Skywalker. Mon Mothma couldn't speak. Yoda, present by holographic projection, only murmured, "Different, he will be. But a strong destiny awaits him." Using Kamino's old records, the rebels activated the accelerated aging protocol. The boy would grow up, and fast. The growth of the new Anakin Skywalker was impressive. The rebellion scientists, combined with Yoda's guidance, used the Kaminoan techniques of genetic acceleration, but with fine adjustments to preserve the clone's sanity. At the same time, Yoda himself went to Dantooine and engaged in intense meditation sessions, channeling the Force to stabilize the child's spirit. It was like guiding a powerful spark through a minefield. Within a few weeks, Anakin already looked 6 months old. In 12 months, he looked almost 5 years old. Even as a young man, Anakin showed unusual mastery over the elements of the Force. His sensitivity rivaled that of the original himself. But what surprised everyone most was the gradual awakening of his memories. Not created or implanted, but emerging from deep within him like distant echoes. He remembered the pod races on Tatooine, the thrill of building C-3PO, when he met Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan, but he didn't remember everything yet. He also remembered a fire and pain. One silent night, after a long meditation, Anakin fell to his knees in the center of the room. Fragmented images danced before him. His mother's death, the massacre he had committed, his forbidden love for Padme, the nightmares of her death, the promise of absolute power, Palpatine offering salvation at an unpayable price. He saw himself brandishing his saber at young Padawans, and felt the broken breath of his own body burning in Mustafar. The memory was so vivid that he almost fainted. But there, he made a choice. He would not be that man. With this revelation, Bail Organa made a risky decision: to summon Obi-Wan Kenobi, hidden for years in the dunes of Tatooine. The message was simple: he's back. But it's not him, referring to Vader. Kenobi hesitated, but when he felt the presence of the Force, he understood. He left in silence, leaving behind the desert that had isolated him. When he saw the young Anakin for the first time, his eyes were filled with a deep fear. He wasn't an enemy, not yet. It was a chance for redemption. Training began in what remained of the old Jedi Temple on Yavin 4. Yoda and Obi-Wan took turns guiding Anakin with rigor and compassion. He ran through ancient ruins, practiced balancing on unstable structures, and meditated for days under cascades of pure energy. Obi-Wan made him face illusions created by the Force, echoes of himself, shadows of Vader, images of past pain. Yoda, on the other hand, pushed him to the limits of patience and humility. Everyone knows how to fight. To listen, few can. With each session, Anakin became more controlled, but also more restless. He wanted to know, am I just a copy? Do I have a soul of my own? Obi-Wan answered with silence and sometimes with old Jedi stories. Yoda, on the other hand, would say, define the origin, not the destiny. In the shadows, light can be born. Little by little, Anakin understood. He was the Force's second chance, and perhaps one last opportunity to bring balance to the galaxy's growing chaos. But there was something else burning inside him: doubt. Doubt turned to anguish when, months later, he had his last and most painful vision. He saw himself on Mustafar, dueling against Obi-Wan. He felt the deadly heat of the lava, the fear, the rage. He saw his body burst into flames as his master looked at him with tears in his eyes. "You were the chosen one," echoed Obi-Wan's voice. The young man collapsed in tears. When he regained consciousness, he looked for Kenobi and, without saying anything, embraced him. Obi-Wan froze, then returned the gesture. They both knew. It wasn't the same Anakin, but it was a new soul. The bond between master and apprentice grew stronger. Obi-Wan trained him more intensely, now with less fear. Anakin excelled in every test. He wielded his saber with precision, flew fighters as if they were extensions of his body, and controlled the Force with delicate dexterity. But at the same time, he carried the wisdom of someone who had seen hell. Fighting not to repeat mistakes. "That's what guides me now," he told Bail Organa, who saw with hope the blossoming of something new. A Skywalker at peace with himself. Meanwhile, rumors of a new Jedi Knight were surfacing in distant systems. The Empire was beginning to worry. Palpatine, on his dark throne, sensed the disturbance in the Force. An ancient shadow. No, something purer, more dangerous. He ordered searches for traces of Jedi activity. Vader, still alive, was unaware that he was about to face his mirror. A younger, stronger, unburnt reflection, and without the corruption. At the heart of the rebellion, however, Anakin gazed at the stars, feeling that his journey had only just begun. He was no ordinary warrior. He was a living memory molded into new hope. And for the first time, the Jedi had a weapon that was not only forged in light, but in redemption. Obi-Wan, watching from afar, whispered, "Maybe you really are the chosen one, this time for real." And then the galaxy breathed differently. A new hero was about to rise. 5 years have passed since Anakin Skywalker's clone opened his eyes for the first time, but he was already grown up and at his peak of power, perhaps even a little more. With Obi-Wan's strict guidance and Yoda's millennia-old wisdom, he quickly achieved mastery of the Force at levels equivalent to his predecessor. But unlike the original, this Anakin didn't have an enslaved childhood, suffer direct losses, or experience manipulation from the cradle. He had those memories, but he was forged with knowledge, patience, and balance. And despite accelerated physical growth, his spirit was steadily molded day after day. The power he now possessed was frightening. He mastered advanced telekinesis techniques, wielded 2 sabers simultaneously, and had learned to use the Force to heal, predict movements, and even sense disturbances in entire systems. In training, he was already able to beat Obi-Wan in mock combat, and Yoda had admitted, with a rare smile, that the young man surpassed all those he had trained. But there was something that neither power nor wisdom could erase. The memories of the dark past that was not his, but lived inside him. These memories of Padme dying, of young Padawans screaming, of Mustafar's black smoke, invaded his mind like ghosts. "They're memories I've never lived through, but they haunt me like real scars," he told Obi-Wan one night. He also asked what had happened to the child Padme was expecting at the time of her death. Obi-Wan told him that they were in fact twins, and that at that very moment they were just children who had never seen their father. "The girl is being raised by Bail, and the boy lives on a farm on Tatooine," the old master replied with a tired look. The new Anakin understood that he too would fight for the twins, and the turning point came when he meditated for 3 days, isolated in the forests of Yavin. There, to the sound of nocturnal creatures and under the pulsating energy of the living Force, Anakin faced his reflection, the old Anakin, Darth Vader, appearing as a projection. They fought not with sabers, but with words. "You are not me," said the clone. "But you carry my pain," retorted the shadow. "No," replied the new Anakin firmly. "I carry the chance not to repeat them." Opening his eyes, he finally felt free. When he met Obi-Wan again, he said firmly, "Now I know who I am." The master, moved, looked at him with a mixture of relief and pride. Those words, which had once sounded like a curse, now sounded like liberation. Anakin smiled. He was ready. The past no longer held him back. The future was his. Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Anakin then met with the leaders of the rebellion. Bail Organa, Mon Mothma, and other strategists listened attentively to the 3 Jedi's analysis. The Empire was reorganizing itself, more ruthlessly than ever, with Vader and Palpatine expanding their control. They needed to act before total domination took place. Time was short and hopes were slim, but with Anakin at their side, there was a light that could pierce even the thickest darkness. 2 ideas came to mind. The first, a direct attack on the Imperial Intelligence Center on Coruscant, cutting off communications between the armies and preventing Imperial mobilization for days. The second, infiltrating rebel agents into Kessel mining stations to blow up the supply routes for Kyber crystals, used in Imperial armaments. Both risky, but promising. Still, nothing seemed to really weaken the soul of the Empire, Darth Vader and Palpatine. It was then that Yoda, in his unnerving calm, proposed something even more daring, using Anakin to deceive the Empire itself. With his face, his presence, and his mastery of the Force, by Vader he could pass. The idea shocked those present, but Obi-Wan immediately supported it. "He can pass through the defenses without arousing suspicion," he said. "And I'll go with him. There would be extreme risks. If Palpatine identified them, it would be the end. But it was also the perfect chance to strike him in the heart. The mission would be meticulous. Anakin would wear armor similar to Vader's, but less dependent on life support. His movements would be rehearsed, his breathing altered by hidden devices. They would enter Mustafar base, where the data on the Empire's secret plans would be kept. Obi-Wan would be their prisoner, pretending to be dominated. Once inside, Anakin would access the system and transfer the data to the rebellion if he wasn't discovered first. The plan was approved in tense silence. Anakin looked at the maps, then at Obi-Wan and Yoda. "If we fail, the Empire will destroy us," said Mon Mothma. Anakin merely nodded. "Then we will not fail." It was the beginning of a new era. The rebellion now had a ghost at its side, a specter from the past reborn in light. And soon Darth Vader would meet his greatest enemy, himself. The rebellion's task was audacious: to infiltrate the Empire and destroy the command base that sustained it. To do this, they needed an incredibly detailed plan. But the biggest challenge lay in creating the perfect disguise. For Anakin, the clone, to be accepted as Darth Vader, every detail had to be reproduced precisely. The clothes, the helmet, the gestures, the voice, everything. Mon Mothma and Bail Organa, aware of the magnitude of the mission, called in a team of engineers and strategists to recreate the Sith's costume. The production of Darth Vader's robes was a painstaking operation, involving the best engineers in the rebellion. They used pieces of technology recovered from Imperial wreckage and created armor and a helmet identical to Vader's. Anakin's voice was modified with an advanced device that imitated the panting and mechanical breathing of the real Vader. Every gesture, from the rigid posture to the heavy steps, was taught to the clone, even how to wield the lightsaber with the Empire's characteristic force. Obi-Wan placed a hand on the young Skywalker's shoulder and, with Vader's mask in hand, said in a strong, clear voice, "You are now the chosen one. Do it." With everything ready, the infiltration plan was set up. The aim was to get Anakin's clone, disguised as Darth Vader, to cross the Imperial defense lines undetected. To do this, the rebellion needed to cause a major distraction. A coordinated attack on the left flank of the Imperial forces would attract the attention of the leaders, while Anakin, as Vader, would silently infiltrate the command center. The other members of the rebellion would be responsible for creating this distraction with a flotilla of rebel ships. On the day of the attack, Bail led a daring mission to attack one of the Empire's great star cruisers. With a group of skilled pilots, he challenged the Imperial forces in a fierce battle, creating the chaos the rebels needed. Meanwhile, Anakin, dressed as Vader, boarded an Imperial ship in disguise, accompanied by Obi-Wan, who would play the role of prisoner. They were ready to carry out their plan: infiltrate the command room and cause as much damage as possible. Anakin stood his ground, not hesitating for a second. "Remember, Anakin, no emotions. You're Vader now. There's no room for failure," said Obi-Wan, his tone grave, as the clone adjusted his helmet. Anakin merely nodded, his expression hidden by the shadows of the visor. They were about to cross the threshold of history. On the way to the Empire's control room, they faced few obstacles. The Imperial forces were completely fooled into believing that they were facing the real Darth Vader. The clone and Obi-Wan passed through the security defenses with frightening naturalness. Inside the Imperial command room, Anakin, still in disguise, approached a central console. Obi-Wan's hands were tied, but he was watching everything cautiously. The moment was right. "Deactivate the security protocols, Anakin," said Obi-Wan, as calmly as someone who already knew what would happen next. Vader's clone activated the terminal, sending out a wave of encrypted data that dismantled the ship's defenses and knocked out communications between the Imperial squadrons. Chaos ensued. The real battle began when the Imperial troops realized the flaw. Anakin's clone, wasting no time, used his lightsaber with lethal precision. Each blow eliminated Imperial soldiers with the coolness of a tireless warrior. Obi-Wan was at his side, defending himself with a blue saber, but this time he knew it was better to let the clone act as the leader. "Do it, Anakin. I trust you," said Obi-Wan, with a confidence that Anakin was beginning to understand as true. Meanwhile, the Empire was being dismantled from the inside out. Palpatine, who was still unaware of the true nature of the threat coming from his own home, ordered Darth Vader to be sent to neutralize the rebellion. But when he arrived, he was greeted by a surprise. Anakin's clone, dressed as Vader, was there to confront him. A titanic struggle began between the two. The real Vader, although he possessed great power, was no longer the young man with the same feelings that Anakin now had. And that clone, unburdened by the past, fought with unbeatable focus. "You're not the real Vader," said the clone in a hoarse voice, echoing that of the original, but full of renewed strength. The Emperor, watching from afar, realized too late what was happening. He tried to use Force lightning to destabilize Anakin, but the clone was already strong enough to block and reverse the attack. A brutal battle raged, but Anakin's clone didn't back down. The red saber fought Anakin's new green saber, and the lights severed Vader's robotic arms as he was overcome by his own. The clone knew he was fulfilling his destiny, and, with one final blow, Anakin destroyed the real Darth Vader, delivering a fatal cut to the helmet of his former self. With Vader dead, Palpatine was next. Without his guard and his allies, he was unable to resist Anakin's immense power, but his enemy was none other than Obi-Wan. It was as if the Jedi Master had thrown his years of anger and frustration at the Sith Lord. Obi-Wan wasn't that old yet, but he was very powerful, and having learned a few tricks from Master Yoda, he used his own rays on Palpatine. Palpatine was increasingly surprised by the power the old hermit still possessed, and when he was pressed to the end, he could only see his pupil lying dead on the ground. The clone had used everything he had to defeat Vader, breaking the connection he had with the galaxy. Even so, because he had the memories and perhaps even understood the thoughts, the Anakin clone held Vader's fallen body in his hand and showed sadness. On the other side, Palpatine shouted at the other young Anakin and offered everything he could to seek Anakin's help, just as he had done with the original. Obi-Wan used the Force to throw Palpatine against the wall and severed his arm. This blow was for the death of Mace Windu. He then threw the wrinkled old man to the ground and tore off his other remaining arm. That other one was for turning Anakin against us. Then Obi-Wan, without any hesitation, made Palpatine scream and cry because of the lightning that kept hitting him. And this was for my master Qui-Gon. Then Obi-Wan's saber had crossed Palpatine's belly, which was split in two, and he fell into oblivion. In the end, the rebellion had triumphed. The death of the Emperor and Darth Vader sealed the Empire's fate. The new galaxy rose from the ashes of the old regime, with Bail Organa leading the reconstruction, supported by loyal allies. Anakin, the clone, now the hero who had overcome his own destiny, looked up at the starry sky, knowing that his mission was accomplished. The light of freedom now shone brighter than ever, and he was finally at peace with who he was. The rebellion's victory over the Empire brought with it an era of freedom, but also a whirlwind of challenges the galaxy had never experienced. The Empire was destroyed, its leaders, its strategists, and its forces annihilated in a series of battles that marked the end of a decades-long tyranny. But new questions arose. The galaxy was free, but now it had to find its way without the centralized authority that had held it together, however oppressively. Bail Organa, now one of the main leaders of the new alliance, knew that the task ahead was monumental. The destruction of the Empire, although necessary, had left a power vacuum. With so many star systems devastated and countless lives lost, rebuilding would be hard and continuous work. The galaxy, once united by fear, now needed to be united by hope, but this would require time, patience, and, above all, unity. "We need to ensure that we don't fall back into anarchy," Bail declared at a meeting with leaders from various factions. "The Empire has been defeated, but now we must build a new system, one that is fair to all. We must avoid the mistakes of the past." The star systems were divided. Some, who had been more loyal to the Empire, were afraid of losing their local power and the authority they had enjoyed during the regime. Others, who had valiantly resisted imperial tyranny, were eager for change, but many doubted the new alliance's ability to maintain order without becoming something as corrupt as the Empire that had fallen. It was a delicate balance, and the rebels knew that it would take more than simple good intentions to make this transition. With the Empire destroyed, the central core of the galaxy needed to be stabilized. Organa, with the support of Mon Mothma, took the initiative to convene an intergalactic conference where representatives from all the star systems could meet to discuss the creation of a new republic. Anakin's clone, now a hero adored by many, became a symbolic figure of everything the rebellion stood for: courage, sacrifice, and redemption. But he, who had overcome his own demons, was now facing a different struggle. He was no longer just someone's clone, he was Anakin Skywalker, a person in his own right. Anakin reflected on this as he watched the horizon of Coruscant, now being rebuilt. The planet, which had once been the capital of the Empire, was now undergoing a major transformation. There was hope on people's faces, but also mistrust. Many wondered what the future would hold. Could one empire be destroyed without another emerging in its place? Meanwhile, Obi-Wan Kenobi, who had been instrumental in the battle against the Empire, continued to teach Anakin, now in a mentoring role. Their relationship was different from the one they had in the past. Before, Obi-Wan had been an authority figure, always seeking to correct Anakin's mistakes. But now, the bond between them was deeper, friendlier. Obi-Wan was no longer the master who had to deal with Anakin's lack of control, but the friend who helped his pupil find his place in an ever-changing universe. Anakin himself was still growing rapidly, so there was no time to lose. He was first introduced to little Princess Leia, now 10 years old. She was a girl who had a lot of conviction about herself and what she wanted, and this made the new Anakin charmed by her during the many conversations they had over the weeks. He then flew with Obi-Wan directly to Tatooine, wanting to meet the boy as well. When he got there, the clone didn't say anything, he just stared at the 10-year-old child, the same age as his own, looking at him frantically. The boy only asked him one question, and it caused a tear to fall down Anakin's cheek. Looking at the device around his waist, he asked, "Are you a Jedi?"